Adam Silver isn't waiting for stars like Caitlin Clark to leave the WNBA. He's trying to move the entire league. Behind the scenes, the NBA commissioner is pushing for a bold expansion of women's basketball into China, where over 500 million fans represent a potential goldmine. This isn't just business, it's a defensive maneuver. Because while the WNBA attempts to build slowly, Chinese investors are moving fast, and their first target was Clark. The league's most marketable star received a blockbuster offer that could have made her the face of basketball across Asia. Her decision to reject it didn't just save the league's image, it stalled an international takeover. That rejection gave the WNBA a critical pause, but it may not be enough. The offer to Clark marks a turning point. Players now have options that outstrip anything the league can match financially. Engelbert's leadership is under pressure to not just retain top talent, but redefine what the WNBA offers in an era where stars can outshine the league itself. As China continues to court American talent and Silver races to plant the WNBA flag abroad, Clark's decision becomes more than personal. It's a signpost of a league at the edge of reinvention or collapse. Caitlin Clark just did something no one saw coming. She turned down a multi-million-dollar offer from China, an offer that would have made her the highest-paid woman in the history of professional basketball. Not just in the WNBA, in the world. And this wasn't some vague, overseas gig. This was a full-scale, government-backed proposal with the kind of global ambition you only see in major sports takeovers. We're talking endorsements, international exposure, brand ambassadorship, the kind of deal designed to take Clark from national star to global icon. She said no, but the offer itself? It shattered the WNBA's sense of control. Because here's what's really happening. The balance of power in women's basketball has officially shifted, and the league is scrambling to keep up. Caitlin Clark's value is no longer up for debate. From the moment she stepped onto a WNBA court, she became the league's biggest asset. Her debut sent ratings soaring. Her name dominates the merch table. She's brought in a wave of new fans, reinvigorated old ones, and single-handedly turned regular season games into national events. So when China came knocking, they didn't just offer her a better salary. They offered her a spotlight that the WNBA simply isn't capable of matching, at least not right now. Her current salary in the league is modest, even by WNBA standards. And when you compare it to what Chinese investors were reportedly willing to put on the table, it's not even close. The offer represented a fork in the road, not just for Clark, but for the league itself, because it proved that the WNBA doesn't own its future anymore. Its stars do. This wasn't about a temporary overseas contract during the off-season. This was an attempt to pull Clark out of the league entirely. A full pivot away from the WNBA. That's the part that rattled the industry. The money was big, yes, but it was the intention that sent a warning shot. And while Clark ultimately declined, the fact that the conversation happened at all has forced the WNBA into a very public identity crisis. China's not just throwing money around for fun. This is part of a calculated, long-term strategy to dominate international basketball, particularly the women's game. And getting someone like Clark on board would have been a game changer. It would have accelerated their plans overnight. She's not just a talented player. She's a brand. She moves culture. So if she had accepted the offer, the ripple effects would have been instant.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
The WNBA would have lost its most bankable star. Other players would have started fielding offers. Sponsors would have gotten nervous. Broadcasters would start asking the hard questions. And the entire structure of American women's basketball would be under threat. Clark didn't just make a personal decision. She bought the WNBA time. But the pressure is now squarely on the league's leadership, especially Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. Because this crisis didn't come out of nowhere. It's been building for years. The WNBA has long struggled with financial disparity. Star players are paid a fraction of what they're worth. Revenue sharing is limited. And despite recent growth, the league is still lagging when it comes to providing its athletes with competitive compensation, infrastructure, and visibility. The fact that someone like Caitlin Clark could realistically consider walking away so early in her career, says everything. This is no longer about potential. This is about urgency. Meanwhile, Adam Silver, NBA commissioner and key figure behind the WNBA's international strategy, is playing a different game entirely. He's thinking globally. He's already made it clear that expansion into China and other international markets is part of the plan. The NBA's own success overseas is the blueprint, and now he wants the WNBA to follow that path. So while Engelbert is focused on keeping Clark from leaving, Silver is focused on building something even bigger, a globally integrated women's league that doesn't just retain talent, it competes for it on a worldwide stage. In theory, it sounds promising, but in practice, the WNBA is already behind. China isn't waiting around for the league to catch up. The government and private investors are putting real money on the table right now because they understand what's at stake. They see the value of women's basketball. They see the gaps in the WNBA's model. And they see stars like Clark as the key to building their own version of what the NBA has achieved. And to be clear, this isn't some secretive side plot. It's a visible, strategic move to reshape the sport at the global level. China wants to be the center of the basketball world, not just for men, but for women too. And they're willing to pay, promote, and pivot to make it happen. That's what makes this so dangerous for the WNBA. Because right now, they don't have the money to match the offers. They don't have the infrastructure to rival China's ambitions. And they certainly don't have the leverage. Their biggest stars are starting to realize they don't need the league to reach their full potential. And this situation with Clark, it's not going away. It's only going to get more complicated. Because even though she stayed, for now, there's no guarantee that she won't eventually reconsider. If the WNBA doesn't evolve fast enough, she'll be forced to choose between loyalty and opportunity. And she won't be the only one. This isn't just about one player. It's about a system that's being challenged by global market forces. And for the first time, the league is having to compete, not with other domestic sports leagues, but with entire countries. The economic disparity is too big to ignore. The top WNBA salary can't touch what China is offering players like Clark. And that gap creates tension, not just for the league, but within it. Because when your most valuable athletes are being underpaid and other countries are offering them everything you can't, your foundation starts to crack. This is why Clark's decision carries so much weight. It's not just a story about one player turning down a paycheck. It's about a sport on the edge of transformation, and a league that's being asked to evolve whether it's ready or not. And the truth is, this transformation is already happening. Globalization is not a future threat. It's a current reality. The players know it. The sponsors know it. The fans know it. The WNBA's job now is to catch up. That means new financial models. That means better revenue distribution. That means international partnerships that don't just export games, but build permanent global structures. Because if the league doesn't do it, someone else will. And they'll do it with Clark or without her. This story isn't over just because she turned the offer down. It's just starting. Because now the league has to answer the question, how do you retain a star who knows her value? How do you keep talent that the world is willing to pay for? How do you build a league where staying feels like the best move, not the most loyal one? Those aren't just philosophical questions. They're financial ones, structural ones, existential ones. Clark's decision has thrown the WNBA's future into sharp focus. The opportunity is huge. The risk is even bigger. What happens next will define more than her career. It'll define the next era of women's basketball. Thanks for watching. If this had you questioning the future of the league like we are, hit that like button, share the video, and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. Drop a comment. Was Clark right to say no? Or should she have chased the global bag? Let's talk. Let's be real. Caitlin Clark rejecting the China deal wasn't a happy ending. It was a wake-up call. Because what we just witnessed wasn't a feel-good moment of loyalty. It was a flashing neon sign that said, this system is not sustainable. The WNBA dodged a bullet, sure, but the gun is still pointed right at its chest. Clark's refusal doesn't erase the fact that she was offered more money, more exposure, and more control overseas than she's currently getting in the very league she's carrying. She's not even in her prime yet, and she's already being presented with life-altering alternatives. Not in the off-season, not as a side hustle, as a permanent exit. And the league's leadership knows it. Behind closed doors, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert and her team are doing everything they can to minimize the damage. There's PR messaging, internal reassurance, maybe even some quiet restructuring talk. Because now that the floodgates have opened, the entire WNBA ecosystem is exposed. The global market has shown up with cash in hand, and the league can't keep pretending that good vibes and Instagram reels are enough to retain its biggest stars. Clark's deal from China didn't come out of left field. It came from a growing international interest in women's basketball, especially in places like China, where the sport is being leveraged for both profit and political capital. They're not just building leagues, they're building infrastructure, sponsorships, media deals, national campaigns. And to them, Caitlin Clark wasn't just a player. She was the missing piece, a marquee name, an icon in the making, the kind of athlete that you can slap on the cover of an international ad campaign and watch the money roll in. Clark had the chance to be more than a player in China. She could have been the face of an entire new sports movement, one that doesn't ask her to compromise her value, one that pays her like she's the phenomenon everyone knows she is. And the WNBA's response? Hope she says no. Not restructure contracts, not offer partial ownership, not expand the salary cap. Just hope. And that's the problem. Hope is not a business strategy, because now that this door has been cracked open, it's never closing. Other players are watching. Agents are watching. Brands are watching. And the next time a jaw-dropping offer comes in, there's no guarantee the answer will be the same. Caitlin Clark might have said, not right now, but the message to the league is clear. If you can't grow fast enough, I'll go somewhere that can. And Adam Silver? He knows this. That's why he's working behind the scenes to push the WNBA onto the global stage. Not because it's a cute idea, but because it's survival. The NBA has thrived internationally for years, and Silver sees that blueprint as the only viable path forward for the women's side of the sport. It's not about just playing exhibition games in Shanghai or slapping Mandarin subtitles on highlight reels. It's about embedding the WNBA into the global basketball economy before overseas markets do it for them. Silver understands that globalization isn't optional anymore. It's the game plan. But here's where it gets tricky. The WNBA isn't ready for that kind of leap. Not yet. The league is still dealing with basic growing pains. Limited TV deals, venue issues, inconsistent marketing strategies, and, let's not forget, grossly underpaid players. Clark's current salary? It's not even close to what she brings in through ticket sales and ratings boosts alone. And that's before you factor in the cultural capital she's generating by just existing in the league. So what's the holdup? Revenue, sure. Sponsorships, obviously. But mostly, structure. The WNBA wasn't built to handle this kind of star power. Not financially, not organizationally, and definitely not globally. That's why Clark's situation is bigger than a contract. It's a litmus test. If the WNBA can't figure out how to retain someone like her, especially when international markets are actively recruiting, then what hope does it have of competing for future talent? Because let's be clear, this isn't about one player anymore. This is about the entire model. And Clark, whether she meant to or not, just pulled the curtain all the way back. She exposed the economic imbalance. She revealed the power shift. And she proved that the league isn't holding all the cards anymore. That used to be the assumption, right? That if you wanted a real career in basketball, the WNBA was the dream. But now, the dream might be in Beijing, or Istanbul, or some future Saudi league we haven't even heard of yet. Clark could have left and earned generational wealth. She chose not to, but now she holds all the leverage. The league can't afford to lose her, but she's made it clear she can afford to leave. And what does that do to the league's authority? It chips away at it, $1 million offer at a time. So now, the question isn't whether players will go overseas. It's whether the WNBA can evolve fast enough to make staying worth it. And not just for Clark, for everyone. Because make no mistake, Clark isn't the end of the story. She's the beginning. She just set a precedent that will be studied, referenced, and used in every major negotiation moving forward. She showed players that they don't have to settle, that they have options, and that they can say no not just to bad deals, but to entire leagues that aren't keeping up. So where does the WNBA go from here? Step 1. They have to pay their stars. Not symbolically. Not someday. Now. That means raising the salary cap. That means restructuring deals. That means opening up new revenue streams and actually sharing them. Step 2. International expansion needs to stop being a bullet point in a press release and start being an actual strategy. Partner with global leagues. Co-host tournaments. Share media rights. Create a pipeline that keeps the talent in the system while embracing global interest. Because if they don't build the future, someone else will. And they'll do it better, faster, and with bigger checks. The WNBA has always been full of talent. That's never been the issue. The issue is the infrastructure hasn't been scaled to support the level of stardom it's now generating. Caitlin Clark is the proof. And the league better hope she's patient. Because next time, she might not wait. She gave them a second chance. She gave them a warning. Now it's on the WNBA to prove it can grow fast enough to meet her where she's already standing. Because if they don't, there's a long list of international markets ready to roll out the red carpet. And this time, Clark might just take the flight. The uncomfortable reality? This saga didn't end with Clark's no. It just exposed how unprepared the WNBA is for its own growth. Caitlin Clark might still be wearing a WNBA jersey, but the message has been sent loud and clear. The stars have options now. And if the league doesn't evolve, it will be outpaced, not by rival leagues, but by its own inability to keep up with the moment. Right now, Clark is the needle and the thread. She's the reason people who've never watched a minute of women's basketball are suddenly tuning in. She's the reason teams are seeing ticket sellouts, merch restocks, and broadcast numbers spike. And she's doing it all on a rookie contract that wouldn't cover the price of courtside season seats in the NBA. This is the disconnect. The WNBA is trying to build a global empire on outdated economics. Clark's offer from China didn't just challenge that system. It mocked it. While the league offered visibility and prestige, China offered ownership-level treatment. While the league hoped her impact would somehow eventually trickle down into a better contract, China was offering the full bag right now, plus power, creative freedom, and international elevation. And the most damning part? The WNBA had no counter. There was no bigger contract waiting. No new sponsor-backed incentives. Just gratitude that she stayed. Gratitude doesn't pay rent. Gratitude doesn't build generational wealth. And Clark, like any star athlete with market value, knows that. She stayed, but that doesn't mean she's stuck. If anything, it means she's now the league's biggest liability and its biggest asset. The WNBA has never relied on a single player the way it's now relying on Clark. She's not one of many. She's the centerpiece of a cultural shift that the league cannot afford to lose control of. And if that sounds dramatic, it's because it is. The WNBA has been pushing for mainstream respect for years. Now that they finally have a player turning casuals into diehards, the stakes are higher than ever. But with stakes comes scrutiny. With visibility comes expectations. And the league is no longer just being measured against itself. It's being measured against what other markets are willing to offer. The WNBA's financial structure was never designed for a Caitlin Clark moment. It was built for gradual growth, for modest increases, for symbolic wins. But global sports don't move at that speed anymore. When a player captures the attention of the world, the response has to be immediate, strategic, scalable. Clark's refusal to leave gave the league a chance to catch up. But the clock is ticking. What happens if the next player doesn't say no? What happens when the international market starts aggressively pursuing not just one star, but an entire generation of them? Because that's where this is heading. Let's be honest. Caitlin Clark isn't the only one underpaid. She's just the most visible example. Other WNBA stars have already played overseas for higher paychecks. The difference is, most of those were temporary deals. Clark was offered a permanent shift in trajectory, a total rebranding as the international queen of women's basketball, a career reboot with financial backing, media infrastructure, and a market of over 1 billion potential fans. The fact that anyone had to think twice about leaving the WNBA for that says everything. This is no longer a story about growing pains. It's a story about growing stakes. Because now, the WNBA isn't just fighting for attention, it's fighting to retain the players who are the attention. And the global competition? They're not waiting. China's ambitions are clear. They want a seat at the center of the basketball world, and they're willing to build that seat around Clark or anyone else with the influence to shift the culture. This isn't about recruiting one star. It's about building a new basketball economy. And they're starting with women's sports because they know it's where the growth potential lies. They see what the WNBA hasn't fully capitalized on. Women's basketball is undervalued, which makes it a prime investment target for international markets looking to disrupt the American sports hierarchy. China isn't coming for the sport. They're coming for its future, and that includes its biggest names. So where does that leave the WNBA? At a crossroads. They can either treat Caitlin Clark's situation as a fluke and risk repeating this panic again with the next breakout star, or they can use it as the pivot point it so clearly is. They can acknowledge that their financial model is outdated. That visibility doesn't equal sustainability. That relying on loyalty is not a viable plan when loyalty is being tested with multi-million-dollar deals backed by state-supported initiatives. The uncomfortable part? There's no guarantee the league can match what China and other countries will offer. Not unless something changes fast. Maybe it's time to revisit ownership models. Maybe it's time to tear up the old salary cap structure. Maybe it's time to start thinking about real revenue sharing. Not just crumbs handed out to keep players quiet, but actual stakes in the league's growth. Because this is no longer a theoretical threat. It's a strategic challenge to the WNBA's future. And Clark, by turning down that deal, just handed the league a chance to respond. The only question now is, will they? They can't afford another "thank you for staying" moment. They need a "we're building something so big, you won't want to leave" strategy. The fans are watching. The sponsors are watching. And more importantly, the players are watching. Clark's next move could shape everything. And the longer the league fails to meet her value, the more it signals to every player in the pipeline that maybe the WNBA isn't the final destination after all. She's not obligated to wait forever. And neither are they. Thanks for riding this one out. If you've got thoughts, drop them below. Should Caitlin Clark have taken the deal? Can the WNBA really compete on the global stage? Hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more drama, breakdowns, and fallout. Because something tells me this is just the beginning.